Is the OBSBOT Tail Air worth it for weddings? Absolutely yes, and let me explain why. Before we dive in, I want to mention that this is a sponsored video and OBSBOT reached out to me to test their cameras. But they don't have any influence over my thoughts, these are my own opinions and they don't get to review this video before it goes live. So let's talk about the OBSBOT Tail Air and how it can make a big difference in your production during weddings. The first thing I need to mention is probably the low light. Weddings, especially receptions, can often be really in dim environments. For those of us who shoot weddings, having a camera that can perform well in those conditions is really a game changer. The Tail Air handles low light impressively well. I wasn't really expecting that. I'm not gonna go really technical in this video. I'm not going to explain every feature that this little device has it. There are tons of many videos in YouTube you can watch and see the exact functions that you can get with this. But one of the coolest features that the Tail Air has is NDI capability. This means you can integrate the camera into your network workflow with ease, making it perfect for live streaming setups. But that's not all. The Tail Air can be paired with a remote controller. Actually, this controller can be paired up to 3 cameras. You can easily switch between cameras by pressing 1, 2 or 3, start-stop recording, or since this is a PTZ camera, you can easily go left and right and adjust the angle accordingly. This is the perfect feature for me. When you are filming a wedding and you need to capture multiple angles, for example, I can be switching between the main dance floor, the musicians or the guests with just a press of a button. There are 3 programmable buttons that you can use to predefine scenes or angles. You can store an angle to P1 and then store another one at P2, and you can have the camera slowly move from one point to another point. You can also do that manually with the joystick, but I really like using those predefined points because it's easier and a quicker way to change angle. In addition to the remote, there is also an app that you can use with these cameras to make your workflow even smoother. Also, by using the app, you can adjust settings like exposure, white balance, your resolution, frame rate, whatever you need as any other DSLR or a mirrorless camera. Usually what I do in my workflow, we work in a team of 4 people. We do photography and videography, where one of the videographers have the remote controller and he can change the angle of the camera. And if he's the second shooter and I'm the first shooter, or I'm mixing using my ATEM Mini, then I can use my phone, go to the app, change the angle however I need. As I said, I'm using the ATEM Mini. I use the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO model, so I can switch between multiple camera angles, multiple cameras during the live stream. By using Yolobox Pro with it, I can quickly go live on Facebook and YouTube, and with the Tail Air, I can easily mimic those extra camera angles. If I have already stored one angle on P1, another on P2 and P3, and I'm using, let's say, 2 Tail Airs, this means like I can mimic 6 camera angles, tricking the viewer that I'm using 6 cameras right now. Usually with the ATEM Mini Extreme you can go up to 8 cameras, but honestly I only use 4 or 5 cameras. But by doing this trick I can really mimic and somehow lie to the viewer that I'm using multiple, more than 4, more than 5 cameras. One thing I have noticed while shooting weddings is that no matter the culture, whether it's a Turkish, Bulgarian, Albanian, Moroccans or Tunisian, these celebrations are full of energy. And when the energy is that high, you need cameras that can keep up. With the Tail Air, I can easily adjust the shot and make sure I don't miss any of those important moments. Okay, this is the good side of it, but aren't there any cons? Sure there are. And one of the things that I have noticed after using this camera for months and months, it's unfortunately the audio quality. In a loud environment where weddings or live music shows are performed with orchestras, DJs and other musicians. The built-in mic on the Tail Air is really just for reference. You really need an external microphone attached to this, and there is a 3.5mm jack that you can use to put your own microphone. But honestly, in wedding environments, you are probably going to hook an external audio recorder to the DJ or the musicians, something like this. I have like 3 or 4 of these for every occasion. That's a Zoom H6 and I'm using it to record my audio, and the audio that is coming from this device is only for reference, so I can sync it later in post. As you can see, I'm shooting this video in the studio, which is Christmas decorated right now, and actually I'm going to use this camera not only for weddings but for studio shots too today. Its compact size makes it perfect for tight spaces like this. My studio is not that big, so I'm gonna need somewhat wide angle, and this camera is pretty wide. There is one feature that is not really helpful in my case, but I'm going to test it today, and it is the AI tracking. I've tested at home just to see how it works, and I can pretty much say already that it tracks me really well, but doing tests at home and actually using the feature on the field is not the same thing. So today I'm going to use this to track me, or maybe I'm gonna put a second one to track the models, and by saying models, these are mostly kids and families. Okay, to wrap it up, I'm going to say that the OBSBOT Tail Air is a powerful tool, not only for weddings, but for events like a whole. It has good live streaming features that you can use just the camera by itself and the app to go live, but I really prefer using wireless transmitters with the Tail Air. So pair this with the Tail Air and I send the signal to the ATEM so I can switch between the cameras. And there is one more thing that I do, and this is keeping it juicy all the time. I bought some of these USB-C cables and I just plug this into an adapter, which is somewhere close by, and this gives me the option to non-stop record the whole night. To wrap it up, the OBSBOT Tail Air, in my opinion, is a really powerful tool that you need to have in your arsenal. For wedding videographers or people doing events, having an extra angle, having the option to quickly switch from one angle to another safe angle that doesn't move but it's there stable is a must-have. It offers really great 4K video quality, performs really well in low light, and is so easy to integrate with all of your production setup. Plus the NDI capabilities, the remote controller that can go up to 3 cameras, it really gives the edge to this product. If you want to make your wedding videography and live streams more professional, this camera is definitely something you need to consider in your arsenal. There is one more thing that I have received from OBSBOT but I have never used. This adapter lets you connect the camera via USB, and on the other side of the cable you have a Ethernet adapter where you can plug your Ethernet, connect it to the network, and also an extra USB-C port where you can use it to charge it. Since the camera has only one USB-C port, when using it you can no longer charge it. So this solves the problem. I am mostly using it with wireless transmitters, but I have tested this, and NDI with Ethernet cable connected works really better. I'm not saying that you won't be able to use it wirelessly with wireless NDI, but I really don't recommend it. If you want to go fully wireless, I have made my own build here where I'm using mini HDMI, or whatever what's its name, to a normal HDMI size, a small adapter from a small rig. When paired with the transmitter, I'm using one of those batteries. Okay, while I was editing this video, I have realized that I have missed a lot of the counts that I wanted to say in this video, but I forgot to mention them. So here's the camera, and one of the counts that I wanted to mention is that the Tail Air has a mini HDMI out. It's not a full-size HDMI. So usually in our production we use only normal size HDMIs, and for this camera specifically means that you always need to bring one more extra cable. As I showed in the video, I have small adapter which goes from mini HDMI to normal full-size HDMI, and this is just a small thing that you need to consider when you buy this camera. It's not really expensive thing, but it's something that you will need so you can use it with the wireless transmitters, or if you want to include it in your mixer. Something else that is also bothering me is that you don't have an optical zoom with this camera. You have only digital zoom, and this also will reflect on the quality of the image. If you are only recording for later to edit it, that's not a problem, because when you digitally zoom using the app or the remote controller, the recorded files on the SD card are actually without the zoom. So if you want to zoom later also, you can totally do that, but it will be digital. The way I use this camera is that I place it somewhere in a corner or somewhere that it will stay safe and people won't hit it. So this means it's supposed to be somewhere in a distance. When it's placed somewhere in a distance, you won't probably get the composition that you want, so you will probably need to zoom in a bit. And I wish that it had a optical zoom so I can easily zoom in and leave it like this. I don't know if I'm asking too much from a PTZ camera, because that's a PTZ camera. It's not a DSLR or a mirrorless where you can just swap lenses and use something narrower. I know I haven't looked over all the specs and quirks of this camera, but I'm looking at this camera from a business perspective. I mean, imagine you need a third or a fourth camera, and any other camera that is considered as a professional, it will cost you around 2,000 without the lens, and once you get to the camera, to the tripods and everything else, just so you can be able to use one more angle, you will be looking at somewhere around 3,500, like 3,500 euros or dollars. I live in Europe, so euro is what we use here. But my point is, if you are just looking for a solution as a C camera or maybe a D camera, that's a great option, because you won't be spending that much money and you will get 4K image, which is pretty crisp and clean. And in the meantime, you won't have to put an operator behind this camera, because with any other DSLR, you will need someone that is physically there, moving the camera, getting the right angle, and you don't need that. With the remote controller, you can easily change the angle or pre-save the angle. As I said, there is one thing that I don't suggest you do if you purchase this camera. Don't use it in auto mode unless you are filming outside. If you are filming outside, no problem, just put it on auto mode and it will give you the best settings that you need to expose your image. But if you are using it inside and you have fluorescent light and the venue, for example, it's not evenly lit, using the auto exposure won't give you the best result. So you probably want to use the app and dial your settings by yourself. Leave it like so, press record, you can forget about it. Second, the battery will last a lot, and by a lot I mean like 2 hours, 2.5. But if you want it to last longer, you can use just any power bank, or you can get a power adapter and just plug it on. The reason why I mentioned NDI as a really cool feature, but personally I'm not using it, that's because our team is not based in one place. I mean, we don't shoot only in one location, and having NDI, like reliable NDI, requires a really good at least LAN connection, which means that every time you go to a location you need to have a lot of cables here and there, and that's something that I'm always trying to avoid. So using a wireless transmitter is quicker and safer. In my production, I mostly use Lumix cameras. I have one S5II as a ATEM, two S5IIs as camera B and camera C, and I use two of these tail airs as a fourth and fifth camera. Usually on those locations where I film, there are tight spaces, even though there are between 500 to 1,000 people in those locations, on those weddings. When the bride and groom enter the hall, they don't really have a lot of space, so you can't really place a camera somewhere in front of them or aside so it can really track them. So I'm mostly putting the camera somewhere behind, which obscures the line of sight, so you don't really see them. Instead, you see the guests that are between the camera and the couple. So ideally, you want the camera to be a bit high and pointing down, and this is not really a good angle. As you saw, I've used the R6 Mark II, the S5II, the normal S5II, the Tail Air, my iPhone 14 Pro. Currently I'm using my iPhone 16 Pro to record this right now, and the reason why I did this was to show you the difference between all these cameras compared to the Tail Air, so you can really have pretty good idea already how does the image really compare to other brands like Lumix, Canon and even an iPhone footage. So for you to be able to decide better if this is something that you want or this is something that you need in your camera bag. In this channel I want to share my own experience, my own opinions about videography, photography and business in general. I'm not looking at stuff only from tech and spec side, but also from business perspective. If you have any questions about this camera, please leave them in the comments down below, and see you in the next one.